ABM strategies are amazing, especially for B2B businesses. But building a strategy and being able to deploy it using automations to ensure that you are consistent and that your strategy is holistic, that sales and marketing are aligned, which is a key component of ABM, that part can be a little bit harder. Why is it so hard? Because there are so many tools that you can use. There are so many options for getting your data, for labeling your ideal customer profile tiers, deciding what makes a target account, company lead scoring, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously you need everybody in sales and marketing who is participating in this strategy to be on the same page about those definitions, how it's going to work, et cetera. But even more important is that if you want to be successful with ABM, you have to have the right automation set up. There is too much data. Like, let's say you're using intent data or surge data from someone like ZoomInfo, Bombora, G2, Gartner. You've got to act on that data at the right time. And when you act on that data, not only do you have to change how you're targeting that audience and how large that audience is with stuff like air cover, but you also need to change a whole bunch of other activities and labels in your CRM and tasks that you're completing, etc. So today in this tutorial, I am going to show you full loop automation and connecting all of the dots for your ABM strategy. And we're going to cover 3 different ideal customer profile tiers. We're going to cover air cover campaigns so that we're targeting people outside of the buying committee or within the buying committee who you don't have in your CRM yet to create more of a buzz. And we're also going to talk about install data. Okay, so we're going to do all of this in HubSpot. We're going to use workflows. We're going to talk about sequences. We're going to take a look at automatically labeling ideal customer profile tiers and target accounts, company scoring, putting people onto ad audiences, using smart content to give the right messaging in your nurtures based on where somebody is at, intent or otherwise, what their ideal customer profile tier is, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to cover all of that and more. So before I go into the demo and tutorial piece, I want to talk through some of the tools that we have and what those tools can do for you when you're running your ABM play. So automation and data are going to be key. So since automation and data are going to be key, the first thing we need to look at is where are we getting the information from to run our account-based marketing plays. Now, at the start of any account-based marketing strategy is a strategy around which accounts we're going to be targeting and how we're going to categorize them and what conditions we're going to have to meet to serve them ads, to put them in sales sequences, etc. So for the sake of today's demo, I'm going to talk about 2 places that you can build your account-based lists, okay? We're going to talk, and we'll make mention of seamless.ai, but we're really going to focus on ZoomInfo and Bombora. And the reason I want to focus on those 2 products is not only can you go into each of those products and build your ideal customer profile tiers and push those tiers into HubSpot automatically and getting them on their proper lists, which allows us to deploy other automations. But these are also going to allow us to push audiences that are surging for our intent topics. So a really quick overview on intent targeting and what that means. So when we run intent targeting, basically what we're doing, so when we look at our marketing funnel, we have awareness, consideration, and then people are at the decision-making stage. And of course, we can break that down into additional in-between stages. But for the sake of this, we're going to talk about those 3. So when we're doing demand generation, and whether you're using intent data or not, you still want to have the awareness ads running. But when someone's in the consideration stage, it would be nice to know. Yes, we know if they go to our pricing page, if they go to our demo stage, our demo page, we could say they're in consideration then. But did they just respond to our ad and they're curious, or are they really considering buying the product now? And if you knew that someone was considering buying the product now, would that change how you target them and what you say? It probably would. And the frequency with which you're targeting, how many different touch points you're threading in, right? So we want to know when someone's showing intent. So what that means when you're using a tool, well, I'll just cover really quickly. G2 and Gartner, their intent is helpful because you can go in and see when someone's looking at your category, when they're looking at your product, when they're looking at your competitors. And depending on how you segment that out, we could say that someone has intent. Now we need to make sure the categories are a good match for you, et cetera, et cetera. But G2 allows you to layer on intent of by people who are looking at your category, comparing your product to others, looking at your competitors, looking at your product, etc. They allow you to layer on Bombora data with that. So we can take the intent that's showing in the software comparison platform, and we can bring in the intent topics. So that's one type of intent targeting, using G2 or Gartner to show people who are looking at certain software categories in their various activities. There are limitations to those particular targeting tools that we won't go into today. For example, you have to lump all of them into one audience. And so, I might only want to look at people, for example, that are looking at me and certain competitors and not my whole category, because not everyone in my category is really in my space, right? Because the categories aren't perfect, but it's a great tool either way. But when we're looking at Bombora and ZoomInfo, what we're finding are taxonomy and intent topics that match the problem that we solve or what our product is, okay? So there are thousands. I believe that Bombora has over 7,000 intent topics. So what we do is we go through and we find the intent topics that align with what we are offering, what solution we provide. So in order for a company, so this is an account-based play, right? So for Bombora, for ZoomInfo, it's accounts that are surging. It is companies that are surging, not Mandy Thompson is surging. It would be digital reach is surging. And then depending on your product, Mandy Thompson and the job role might be somebody that you want to add to your audience because they would be a decision maker or be on your buying committee, okay? So what we're looking at is choosing those intent topics. And then depending on whether it's ZoomInfo or Bombora, Bombora uses something called Surge. So what that means is that on that domain, on the domain of the company, of all of the people with emails and who are using, who are connected to that domain, there has been a 60% increase in the amount of traffic to content, searches, websites, etc., that talk about that particular topic. And so this shows that someone's in the consideration stage, not in the curiosity stage. Like I said, if they respond to my ad because it was good and they come in and they might go to my pricing page and then go to the demo page and move on. We don't know if there's really intent there. We know that the ad made them curious, but we don't know, is the company going to buy this quarter? How many people are active right now? So when we see something like company surge, we know that people are active, okay? So what we can do with tools like ZoomInfo and like Bombora for HubSpot, what we can do is go in, we can enter our ideal customer profiles. We can go ahead and pull account lists based on that. And then we can set up workflows to push those accounts to our HubSpot based on their surge or not. But we can also bring them in when they're not surging, okay? So we can bring them in when they're not surging, and we can leverage automations to serve them nurtures, to serve them warm-up sequences, to target them with awareness ads. Then when they are surging, we can push them in, surface them to sales, get people acting on and reviewing these accounts, put them in different ad audiences with different messaging, nurtures with different messaging, etc. And then using HubSpot workflows, we can automatically segment these people into their job role, into their job roles and functions, so we can get them the right messaging, get them into the right ad group, personalize their email nurtures with smart content. Okay, so what we're going to look at today is how we do all of that, how we go through, create our ideal customer profile tiers, build those out, and get our target account lists from Bombora, from ZoomInfo, pushing those into our CRM, using that information to automatically run ad campaigns on our various ad platforms to put people in the right nurtures based on whether they're in awareness, consideration, or decision-making stage. Getting these leads surfaced to sales so that if you're using ZoomInfo, which has contact enrichment, you can go ahead and start working those contacts that you brought in. If you're using Bombora, which does not have contact enrichment, but is less expensive than ZoomInfo, then you can go ahead and start reaching out to people on Sales Navigator. I know there's a big debate about, do we really even need contact enrichment, considering that LinkedIn Sales Navigator for most B2B organizations is more effective than using email, the email addresses we get from a tool like ZoomInfo. So we're going to build those out. We're going to push those into HubSpot. And then when they're into HubSpot, we're going to get them on the right list, get them into the right ad audiences, get them the right nurtures, surface them to sales at the right time, score the companies so that we can rate them and segment them well and run an amazingly automated engine. So we are not going to go into the ZoomInfo and Bombora platforms. We're going to talk about and look at a diagram of how they work, but we are going to jump into HubSpot, line everything out inside of HubSpot, get super detailed and super granular in how we build these workflows, what our triggers are, what our if-then branches are, what the actions are, so that you can run an automated ABM play. So let's go ahead and get into the demo. So here's a summary of the steps that we're going to cover in the tutorial today. Number one is identifying our ICPs through firmographic, demographic, and technographic information. Technographic information would be, hey, let's say we integrate really well with another piece of software, then somebody who meets our revenue, headcounts, region, whatever our parameters are for that tier one, maybe we would have a tier 1 plus or a special tier for tier 1 plus install. So, because obviously we can resonate with that account in a different way. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to be defining these ideal customer profiles. And then we're going to talk about building your target account list, your ICP profiles or your target account list in a tool like Bombora or ZoomInfo to push those things to HubSpot. So like I say here, if you have a tool like that, then we can find your target accounts and match your ideal customer profiles and push people right in, label them with their profiles, and then deploy the rest of our account-based marketing play based on that information. Talking about configuring, we're going to go over how to configure HubSpot to label and surface target accounts based on your ICP or tier parameters and workflows when you're adding companies, whether that's on your own by pulling them through something like Seamless AI or by adding them through Bombora or ZoomInfo. And then we're going to talk about alerting your SDRs and AEs when a new ICP tier 1, 2, or 3 company is added, if they're active, when someone's labeled as a target account. And we can base this on a number of things like when a certain target account reaches a certain score, what have you. So we're going to go through how to do that. And then this is just an additional thing that figuring out how you want to surface when to build the buying committee and when to start working with marketing on custom content. And then we're going to go from there into running your nurtures, air cover, retargeting, and sequences based on ICP tier, company score, and other firmographic, technographic, and demographic information. And how we can, using a tool like Bombora, whether it's Bombora for ad spend, for ad campaigns only, or Bombora for HubSpot, or if we're looking at ZoomInfo for HubSpot, how we can push surging companies that we were talking about earlier, those intent, consideration, beyond just your website companies, how we can add them to audiences that will include air cover for non-buying committee roles, include a higher amount of frequency or different content for buying committee job roles and functions who are also in that consideration stage, and how when those companies stop surging, we can actually pull them out. So we're not continuing to expend the same resources when they're not surging anymore. So those are the things that we're going to cover so that we can make sure that we know what our ICP and our target account parameters are so that sales and marketing are aligned on that. Then marketing can support sales, your IT, MOPS, whoever owns your tech. They can make sure that sales is getting the right notifications, tasks, surfacing of accounts, enrolling in sequences, workflows, etc., based on whether they're surging, what those tiers are, what the install data is, job roles and functions. We're going to cover all of that. And then we are also going to just talk about how these outside tools can play a role. So first thing we're going to jump into real quick is I just want to give you an example. If we do not have the Bombora or ZoomInfo, then what we can do is use Seamless AI and use Bombora for ads. So for example, if you work with an agency like Digital Reach, we have an agreement rather than you having to commit $60,000 a year to use the tool or $25,000 a year to use the tool, we can actually do it based on ad spend and do it as a pay-as-you-go model. So that allows us to have our surging companies targeted in our ad platforms, bring contacts in from those companies that we'll be targeting into our HubSpot account through Seamless.ai, which is just a lower price point for a contact enrichment tool so that we can run these same plays for somebody who has a lower budget. Because you're looking at, probably $20,000 a year minimum for either ZoomInfo or Bombora for HubSpot, where you're able to push in those surging companies and contacts. And then remember from earlier, ZoomInfo has the contact enrichment, Bombora does not. But again, like we said earlier as well, not sure if that's as important considering what we can do with LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So that being said, let's jump right in. First thing we need to do, right? We have our ICP tiers. So let's go ahead and let's go to our company properties. So when we're looking at our ideal customer profile, so if we're going to go in here, the nice thing about this property is we can edit it, right? So we have tier 1, 2, and 3, but what I'm going to do is tier 1 plus install, okay? Because we actually want to have that tier as well. So let's go ahead and move this up here, and we're gonna go ahead and update that. The next thing we want to do for this build out, because we're going to rely heavily on lists, is we want to set up the list that Bombora or ZoomInfo are going to push our tier 1, 2, 3 surging contacts into, or non-surging contacts, depending on the product you have. If you have ZoomInfo Advanced, you're not going to have the surge and intent information. So depending on what your tools are, will depend on how this works, but don't you worry. I am going to produce a tutorial video this week, a little bit later in the week, on which tools do what, so you can understand what actions you can and can't take and automate based on the tools that you have. So that'll be coming soon. So if you can see here, we have our marketing decision makers for each tier, because we're going to use those audiences. We have our ICP tier 1 plus install data. We have our regular ICP tier 1, 2, and 3, and then we have our air cover audiences for 1, 2, and 3 as well. So we're going to be using those. So what we want to do first is we want to take a look at how are we going to label our tiers. So we're going to go ahead and go into, as you can see, I am going to go ahead and show you this at a very zoomed out level first, because this is quite a large workflow. So high level, what we do is when a new contact is coming in from ZoomInfo or Bombora, we're going to push them directly into an if-then branch. And we're going to push them into that if-then branch to say, are they tier 1 with install, tier 2, or tier 3? And then we're going to add them to the appropriate list. We're going to set their property value to a target account if that's in fact true. And then we're going to run another if-then branch so that we can break down because we're going to set up these workflows in ZoomInfo and Bombora. When you set those up, not only can you choose your ICP for your accounts, but you can also choose on the contact side out of the accounts that either match your target account parameters or they match your target account parameters and are surging. So we can set up to push those people in different workflows into our HubSpot instance, and we can choose which job roles. So for this particular one, we're going to push in people who we believe are going to be a part of our buying committee. But in another workflow that I'm going to show you over here, we'll get to this one a little bit later to describe it. This is what we're going to do with the people who aren't in the buying committee, but we still want air cover for. So, okay, let me go ahead and zoom in so we can start with what we did at the beginning. So you need to figure out your identifiers for what is going to uniquely identify your ZoomInfo and Bombora contacts. Then we need to, so what we did here was a latest source drill down. So you can choose which one you want, but when they're coming in, their latest source drill down is going to include ZoomInfo or Bombora. So then if we go to our if-then branch, what we're going to do is we're going to define it. And we can do this right here because this is going to label people with the right tier and it's going to add them to the right list. Okay. So what we're going to do is I just said tier 1 is 50 million a year in revenue or greater. So let's figure out some other, let's take a look at the number of employees. Let's say that these companies, they need to have 500 employees or more to fit our tier 1 profile. So let's go ahead and add that. And then let's say that they also need to, in addition to their revenue and their employees, let's go ahead and say their country locations. So maybe we would say contains all of, and then we can pick our countries, right? So let's say that we only want to target companies in tier 1 that have locations in the US. Let's say it's all English speaking. So we want to talk to companies only if they have locations in all of our English speaking countries. So let's go ahead and just grab these. Okay. All right. So we went ahead and set that up. So our tier 1 is going to be based on the number of employees and the locations. So tier 1 plus install is going to need to have all of the same parameters, except we also want to say that install data is known. Okay, so we won't take time setting those up, but you would just add the other parameters. Then for tier 2, we're going to say the revenue is between 25 and 50 million. And then again, we would add these other parameters. So we'd say, okay, the number of employees, again, we're going to do a between. It is less than 500 because we had the other greater than. But then we also want to say that the employee headcount is, let's say it's more than 250. So then we're going to say greater than 250. Okay, so now we have our headcount figured out. Awesome. So then the last thing we're going to do for tier 3 is going to be anybody else who does not meet that. And Maybe for tier 2, we also say all of those locations, or maybe for tier 2, they have to have, they have to have maybe 2 of those locations, right? So we can go ahead and set that up. So let's say we went with country locations. We could say contains is any of instead of is all of, right? I think on the first one I set up any of, I meant all of. So on this one, we could say any of, right? So we want to make sure that they have at least, or maybe we would say, okay, they have the United States, and then we're going to also make sure that they have, and in addition to the United States, that they have any of our other, right? So we would say they also have to contain any of United Kingdom, let's say Canada, we're going to say Australia and New Zealand, all right? So they need to have, in order to be a tier 2, they need to have the United States and one of these other locations, okay? So let's say that was our definition. Great. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to be able to label all of these. So now that we've saved the parameters, what we want to do, so let's go on over here and we're going to zoom in here. So in branch number 1, for tier 1, we're going to add them to the static list. We're going to set them to be a target account because if they're coming through from our workflows with Bombora and ZoomInfo, they are probably target accounts. That's what we're aiming for. So then what we want to do is we want to go ahead and update the update property value, right? So we're going to set these companies. We're going to go ahead and set the ideal customer profile on these to tier 1. All right, so we're going to go ahead and save that. And now anybody who meets these parameters that comes through from ZoomInfo, any of the companies, they're going to be set to, well, all the contacts associated are going to go onto the Bombora ZoomInfo ICP tier 1 list. So we made that list. This is going to add people to that list. Then we're going to use that list later in ad campaigns, okay? We're going to set the company property to a target account. We're going to go ahead and update that it is an ideal customer profile tier 1. So then what's going to be fun is, and you can do the same thing on all of these branches, right? So we can add tier 1 plus install here. We can add tier 2 here. So let's look at what we're doing. Again, we did an if-then branch to break out tier 1 plus install, tier 2, and tier 3. We're adding them to the appropriate list. We're setting them to be target accounts. And then the step that I didn't put in ahead of time that I added was to go ahead and set the property value. So again, let's go over here to tier 2. And we're going to say, we're going to set a property value. It's going to be a company property value. And we are going to say ideal customer profile. And we're going to set this as tier 2. Okay, so that's the first part. So what we just accomplished, let's talk about this. We got them onto the correct list so that we can email them appropriately, right? Because later when we want to use smart content, we want to target them based on their profile because that might give us some information about them that is important. We also want to make sure we label them as a target account, and we also want to make sure that these companies have the correct ideal customer profile tier so that they're surfaced to the right reps. So we might say that these reps in our automation all get tier 1. These ones get tier 2. These ones get tier 3. So we want this all to be set up so that all of our data is clean, so that all of our other automations for sales enablement and for marketing work correctly. So now let's go back over here. So we added them to this list. We set the target account. We went ahead and set the ideal customer profile tier. Now what did we do? Well, we want to break out their if-then branches into their different job titles. So we have, for this example, revenue or marketing decision makers, revenue decision makers, operations decision makers, okay? So what we did was we just went ahead and said anyone who meets or contains any of these words in their job title will go into the marketing decision maker bucket. Any of these will go into the revenue decision maker bucket. And any of these will go into the operation decision maker bucket, okay? So then for any of them that go into the marketing, well, what are we going to do? We are going to add them to an ads audience for the marketing decision makers. We are going to add them to a list for marketing decision makers. Why are we going to do that? Why are we adding them to a list and adding them to an audience? We are doing that because we want to add them to a list so that we can customize the smart content and their experience based on the list they're in, because marketing has different needs than revenue, has different needs than operations. And some of those needs overlap, and we'll have that as well. Okay. So now all of this is going to work perfectly. And now we're going to go ahead and enroll this person into the nurture workflow because they meet the parameters that we have. So within that, we could put more if-then branches and say, you know what, we're actually not going to nurture them right now, but we're imagining these people are surging, right? They're in that high consideration stage. So let's target them with ads, let's nurture them, and let's have your sales team reach out to them via Sales Navigator, sequences, however they're doing it, email sequences, so that they can get those meetings booked, so that they can start building their buying committee, okay? So this has just automated a lot of things for us, right? Okay, but there's more. So let's go on over here to our air cover. So now we have the same thing, but we're going to have that the job function are the job functions that we don't think are going to be involved. So for this example, I said sales and marketing, of course, we use. So that's just ignore that. IT, HR, accounting, finance, right? So now we're saying, okay, we set up workflows in Zoom Info and Bombora to push these people in, but let's make sure that they get to the right place, right? Which also means we would want to exclude them on this workflow, right? So giving you an example of how we do that, we would go up here and we would say, and we would say I'm sorry, not contact properties, company properties. Okay. So then we're going to say job function doesn't contain any of IT, sales, HR. Okay. Just say those are the ones that we want. All right. So we're going to exclude them there. We're going to include them in air cover. So then what we're going to do, again, we're going to go ahead and break them out by our different tiers. And then we're going to put them in we didn't use install here. And the reason is we aren't going to talk install connections and integrations with our air cover audience. We're only going to talk about that with our buying committee. So we're just going to break it into tier 1, 2, and 3. So again, we've broken it into tier 1, 2, and 3 right here by adding them to those static lists. And again, even though we're going to add them to the ad audiences, we're adding them to the static lists so that we can make sure that we can use smart content when delivering them landing page experiences, CTAs, emails, wherever else we can use smart content. So, all right. So now what do? We added them to this ad audience, which is tier 1 air cover. Now, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 air cover may have all the same messages, but if it's tier 1, I might spend more money on the frequency or have a more expanded audience. So again, in these if-then branches, we could go ahead and say, tier 1 will include this like more broad audience. Tier 2, a little bit smaller. Tier 3, maybe we have no air cover at all. Maybe it's a bit smaller. So again, we figure out what's the trigger. So adding people of those job titles, we're going to break them down into their tiers. And again, we might say that in tier 1, we're going to take all the titles. So if we were going to do that, then we would say it is this, and we would say that that's not a company property. Just kidding. My bad. So then we're going to say, and contact property, job function. So in this one, we might use all of these, right? So we're going to say IT, sales, HR, accounting, finance. All right. So there we go. On tier 1, we're going to target everyone. But on tier 2, maybe we're like, you know what? We want to have a little bit less budget for this one because it's only a tier 2. So maybe what we're going to say is, all right, we'll target sales and we'll target HR, but maybe we're not going to target and IT, but maybe we're not going to target finance and accounting. Okay. And then maybe on tier 3, maybe we're not going to target at all, or maybe we're going to limit, right? So if we wanted to add more targeting to tier 3, other than everyone who doesn't qualify here though, then we're going to need to make it its own branch rather than just making it the not qualifies for everything else branch. Okay. So now we can add these people to the, to their air cover ad audiences. And then if we wanted to, it's like, you know what, let's go ahead and put them in the nurture as well. Let's go ahead and put them in the tier 1 nurture. Okay. So now we've also enrolled them in that workflow. Awesome. So now what about surfacing our target accounts to sales? So again, when do we want them to be surfaced? So number 1, what we're going to say is we aren't even going to trigger this workflow with a company until we have 1 buying role and 1 decision maker. All right. So you're not going to be surfaced to anybody until then. But then again, when it comes to making those if-then branches, right, what I did here was having a company score equal or greater than 100 to put them in a high score, 50 to 100 for a mid score. And then low score is anything under 50, right? And so if you take a look down here, what I did down here was had a task to begin building the buying committee, and then a delay. And then after that, if they haven't been to the website, if they have been to the website, then we're going to reach out and start a sequence for a hot lead. If they haven't, then we're going to send them a nurture email. So what are we going to do in these situations, combining all of the different actions that we have, right? And we can go ahead and segment this more. So if we want to do a high score, we could say, not only do you have to have a company score greater than or equal to 100, but you also need to have the number of contacts with buying roles needs to be greater than or equal to 2. Because if we don't have 2 buying roles, then we don't want to get this going. And let's just go ahead and say the same thing with decision makers. So our number of decision makers is also got to be greater than or equal to 2. Okay. So then we can go ahead and we can create whatever tasks and actions, and we can go ahead and carry this out. That again, we're going to go ahead and we're going to begin building the buying committee by sending some, maybe what we do is a sequence or outreach, connecting to people on Sales Navigator. We can build our sequences for that. We're going to wait 2 days. And then if we have action on the website, like someone's raised their hand, they're responding to our marketing, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to create the task to reach out. And if not, we send the nurture. Okay. So now we've surfaced and we're handling the flow with sales. So then the next thing that we want to take a look at is how we're building these nurtures, right? So we can have the list membership and build out our nurtures. That's super easy. So then the last thing we want to take a look at is, this is on an email, but again, we can do this using our smart content or anything else. How are we going to do our smart content, right? So if we go ahead and click in here, now we already have rules for what we're going to serve to tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and to tier 1 plus install. And of course, we can add more to this, right? Like if we're going to send, for example, if we're going to send our air cover audiences, then we can go ahead and have another one that we're going to serve to the air cover audiences, okay? So then what we can do is, if this is tier 1, so people that are tier 1, maybe we have something that calls out the size of their company and like, you've reached this much success because they're already in that top tier. Maybe we customize that content when we're targeting tier 2 to say, and this can be done on landing pages, certain CTAs as well, like the pop-ups, etc. So maybe on tier 2, maybe what we're going to say is, you want to reach this point, we can help you, right? And then tier 3, it's like, hey, we know where you're at in this growth stage and wanting to reach X, Y, and Z, we can help, right? And if we're qualifying them by the amount of revenue they have, we can even say, hey, if you have, if you want to reach 50 million in revenue, like we know this about you. So this is where we get our awesome personalization in play. So let's recap all of this, okay? We talked about how you can push your contacts from Bombora, from ZoomInfo into HubSpot, and we can trigger all of these beautiful, get these people on their list by triggering all these beautiful automations that are going to allow us to go ahead and get everybody. Let's go ahead and reduce this out so we can see all of our beautiful work we have here, okay? So this is where we are going to allow ourselves to get these people onto their right list, label them as target accounts, get them their ideal customer profile tier, segment them by audience so that we can deliver email nurtures, ads, and sequences that are relevant to their audience, okay? We're gonna have our company scoring running so that as they score, as they become active, we're surfacing these accounts to sales reps at exactly the right time so that they can reach out, so that they can get what they need from marketing. We're running air cover to make sure that all of the people related to that target account, when it is surging, when the company is in that consideration stage, making sure that those people are getting that content. And then finally, making sure we get the nurtures dialed in and getting our smart content personalized across our entire HubSpot experience, landing pages, emails, and CTAs, so that we have a completely customized experience. And of course, we can bring the chatbot into this, or if you have an outside chatbot like Drift, bring that in so we have a closed loop, full cycle, automated thing. So remember what I said. If we're going to increase frequency, like when someone is surging, so you could take this very first workflow that we went over, and your first if-then branch could surging versus unsurging, right? And what's non-surging. And what's so fun is HubSpot, makes it super easy to clone these things. So check this out, right? Like if I want to clone this right here, rather than rebuilding everything, I'm going to clone all of these actions, and I'm just going to click place here, and those are going to go right there. And then all I have to do is update which list these people are going to, which ad audience are going, what list, and what workflow they're going into, okay? So we can, and once we customize those lists, then we can
All of our smart content and everything can be customized additionally. And what we can do is if we're splitting this up between surging and non-surging, the non-surging, they're in the awareness stage, unless they already have a company score with us or something that's indicating that they're more interested than that. So we're going to run different campaigns. We're going to run a different cadence than the companies that are surging, who are in the consideration stage right now, looking at our company or our competitors to make a decision in the near term about what tool or what solution or what service, whatever it may be, they're going to buy. So we want to get them with different messaging, more frequency, get sales on it sooner. So we can automate segmenting all of this out. And like I mentioned earlier, Zoom Info, Bombora, if you buy the tool that hooks right in, they're going to pull those surging audiences out and push them in every week to make sure that we don't have to manually do that and that we're not wasting ad budget on somebody who made a decision, whether it was us or somebody else. And if you don't have, remember this, if you do not have the Bombora or the Zoom Info for your HubSpot, that's okay, because we can actually do this using seamless.ai to bring people in and then using Bombora for ads. So we can go ahead. We will not pull all the target accounts and people that are surging, but again, once they convert and raise their hand, then you can be on it, right? And so if we're targeting those audiences, again, Bombora's tools every week are going to pull out those companies that are no longer surging and push on the ones that are. Within the Bombora tool, we can set it up so that we have air cover audiences and we have the buying committee audiences. We can push this to Facebook to make Facebook legit for B2B. We can do, with that, of course, Instagram. We can push them to LinkedIn, and we can push them to Google Display, or we can push them to our favorite DSP using LiveRamp. So lots of options here, lots of information that we've covered. If you have questions, I'd love to hear them in the comments. I'm happy to help. And there will be 2 more tutorials coming on ABM in the next week. One of them is going to cover a whole bevy of tools that are available and break down and compare what they do and what they don't do. So we'll take a look at Rollworks. We'll take a look at G2, Gartner, Zoom Info, and Bombora, the main ways that people are getting their intent data. Of course, there are other options out there, but those are the ones that I'm going to cover on the next training. And then we're also going to do a tutorial that gives a schematic of what, from a marketer's lens, what an ABM campaign is going to look like, as far as when do your target account lists come in, when do your awareness audiences come in, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to do both of those tutorials coming up later this week. So I hope to see you for those. And again, if you have any questions, let us know. Check out what we do over at digitalreachos.com and have yourself a wonderful day. Thanks.